There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Ranch Michael Weiser.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon. It's good to be back north in Westchester. I was in Jupiter, Florida for the last 6 months. I want to thank all the people, all our fans, all our subscribers who prayed for me on my long, arduous drive home. I drove for 21 hours over 2 days. I'm still a little bit numb, but I made it nonetheless, and I want to just thank everyone for praying for me. You know, tonight we're covering a case that unfortunately we're seeing way too often lately. And it derives out of bad relationships, obviously, in marriages, but it escalates to a level that it should never get to. And we've seen these cases over the last year with Gabby Petito, Maya Malete. Now we don't know what happened to Madeline Kingsbury in Minnesota. Years ago, a famous case of Dr. Robert Birnbaum in 1985 killed his wife, put her in an airplane, flew over the Atlantic Ocean and threw her out into the ocean. And they didn't charge him till 2000. So for 15 years, he was a free man. But we're going to examine do these things happen? And what did the police do to build these cases? How did they build these cases? Of course, the person that is charged with it, is potentially guilty of it, is fighting for their, legal life in court. But the police have to do an outstanding job in order to build a case. And there's many, many of these cases lately. And we're going to discuss the evidence that the police must uncover, both electronic evidence, physical evidence, blood evidence, potentially weapons if they were used in these cases. And in this case, with Brian Walshe, who is now officially charged with killing his wife, Ana Walshe. He was in jail for a while for a different charge. He was arrested on January 8th, 2023. And it was that he misled investigators. That's what he was being held in. And he also had a case. So when we talk about perpology, the study of the perp, he had a case where he was going to prison for selling bogus art, Andy Warhol prints, and passing them off as the real thing to an art gallery. So he sort of had a criminal mind here, but it escalated into the unthinkable. And today, on the 23rd, it was the 24th, they announced in court that he is in fact being charged with the murder of his wife, Ana. And these cases baffle all of us because here's a couple that have 3 young boys. And now the 3 young boys are without both parents. If, of course, again, Brian Walshe is innocent to proven guilty, but he's in jail right now awaiting trial. And so potentially the kids could be without both parents. If he does get convicted of this crime, they're going to be without both parents. So how horrific. With me tonight to discuss this case is retired NYPD detective and straight out of Brooklyn, Phil Grimaldi. How you doing tonight, Phil?
I'm doing good, Billy. Welcome back to the Northeast, baby.
Well, I can't say that I'm so thrilled.
I know.
My driveway was cold and rainy. I was like, oh, welcome back to the Northeast. But I'm happy to be home. And also a double treat tonight is retired NYPD Sergeant, Professor Mike Geary, a professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut. Also, Mike has a law degree. Mike, welcome to the Police Off the Cuff show.
Bill, thank you for having me and welcome back.
Mike, it's so good to have you because you almost never turn me down unless you have some family catastrophe,
Right.
and that doesn't happen too often. But
No.
Phil, I want to play a little bit of the court. Well, this is the court TV. A little bit of this video. It tells a lot about this case.
You got it, Billy. The wonders of live broadcast. You want me to give a little rundown, Bill? Bill, nothing's playing. I don't think he could. Could you hear me, Mike?
I can hear you fine.
Okay.
But maybe we're having some severe technical difficulties.
I don't think Billy's hearing us. The chat is saying I could hear you, Phil.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and signal Bill. I don't think he's hearing us.
No.
You know what? Maybe I'll just give a little rundown of
Yeah.
the early stages of the case. Billy, I don't think you could. We can't. He's not hearing us. I'm going to just give a little quick rundown of what went on in this case. Ana Walshe was last seen alive on New Year's Eve, and basically early on New Year's Day was the last time that she was also known to be alive. On New Year's Day, the husband Brian had reached out to the babysitter and asked the babysitter to come to the home to watch the kids from 2 to 7 p.m. So that him and Ana could go out and get something to eat. When the babysitter arrived, Ana wasn't present. Brian informed her that she had been called out of town on an emergency. She was a real estate agent that worked in Washington, D.C. They lived in Boston, Massachusetts. Actually, in not Boston, but it was in the Massachusetts. It was somewhere in that area. Anyway, when she gets there, she's told that Anna's not present. And there is a period of time where he goes out, he comes back, he goes out, he comes back. And he doesn't report Anna missing until the 4th of January. That's when concerned people from where she worked had contacted him, and he contacted back. He hadn't heard from her. And that's when eventually she's reported missing. The police visit the home and they find the Volvo in the driveway with the seats down, plastic liner inside. They later find traces of blood in the Volvo. That was on the 4th of January. On the 5th, Brian is believed to have made visits to his mom's Swampscott apartments nearby in the area with trash bags that were put into the dumpster. There was video surveillance of him making 5 or 6 trips to dumpsters. Later on, they wind up recovering, they say, 10 bags. There was rugs with bloodstains, cleaning products, and his boots, a hacksaw, which also had blood and a bone fragment, a Prada purse, which we believe belonged to her,
Right.
some jewelry, a necklace, which there was pictures of her wearing that necklace, and also towels with some bloodstains on them, and a COVID card. Mike, is there anything that I left out? Maybe you want to throw some comments about the early stages of this investigation.
Yeah. Apparently, the last definite sighting by an adult, because there was a little inconsistency about about January 1st, but the last time an adult saw her and told the police that they were seen was like 1 o'clock in the morning, right after they finished celebrating New Year's Eve. The one guest that they had left around between 1 and 1:30, which is a normal time. And then
Right.
that was it. That was the last time she was actually seen by an adult. There is one report that I've heard that one of her children, maybe they interviewed a child and said they thought they saw their mother. Maybe they got the date wrong. They saw their mother on the afternoon of the 1st, sometime in the afternoon, which would be inconsistent with what the time frame that the police are working with. But the problem, one of the problems also with the gentleman is that he was seen. He gave a description of where he was at CVS and then a couple of stores. And
You're talking about Brian, Mike? You're talking
right,
about
Brian,
Brian
right?
Walsh?
And
Okay.
there was no evidence that he would gone to either one. So his alibi for where he was in the beginning of like business hours on the 1st was blown to pieces. They found, as you said, they found the Volvo, they found the blood, they found the tarp, they found the surveillance video of him at Lowe's getting all kinds of cleaners, Tyvek suit, buckets, mops, cleaning agents.
Mike, I don't mean to interrupt you, but before we go to that, I just want to make a comment about something. Brian had been diagnosed as a sociopath years before by the I have it written down here. The Norfolk Superior Court is where the case is being held. The Austin Riggs Psych Center in Massachusetts had identified him as being a sociopath. He obviously had some issues in the past. He also had a pending criminal case for selling that Bill talked about in the early, as soon as we came on, for selling the fake Andy Warhol art. So again, there was the components of that, which I'm going to lean towards motive with that, because apparently she had conversations with a friend where she said she knew he was going to be going to jail and he was going to be sentenced on those charges, and that she was going to leave him and take her children and move to DC. So that's probably the first component of the motive. And then we also,
I'm back. I have a problem with the monitor, and I'm not going to explain. So one of the things I wanted to talk about today is that, look, how the police are building this case against him, and not just him, how the police build the case against, Brian Laundrie in the Gabby Petito case, how the police are potentially building a case against Adam in the Madeline Kingsbury case. Some of the things that they do, and Mike, I want you to go with this one. Some of the most important things, of course, are using a cell phone and using computer technology. Here he was searching things on Google. How long does it take for a body to start decaying? All different types of things. I had the list of them. Hacksaw, is it the best tool to dismember?
Yeah, that was another search.
Dismemberment and best ways to dispose of a body. I mean, those are the things that people don't understand. They don't just stick out. You got to find them. And he wasn't smartly, or maybe not smartly, he was using his son's iPad to search these things. I guess thinking that the police, they'll never search my son's iPad. They'll be looking for mine, and I'm not searching on mine. Not the brightest bulb in the, his wattage was a little off, I think,
No. I think part of the problem is, as a sociopath, he doesn't see anything wrong with that. He doesn't connect the dots like a normal person would. For him, it's a tool. He's got to solve a problem. He's got his wife in the basement. She's dead. She's bleeding out. He has to dispose of her body, and he's just doing a random Google search. Was not well thought out. Thankfully, makes it easier to prove in a court of law the case against him. But for him, he's a sociopath. He doesn't. Dismembering a body is not a big deal for him. He's just trying to figure out, okay, I got to solve a problem. How do I look this up? I'll use the internet. I'll Google. Everybody can Google anything nowadays. I Google how to dispose of a 110-pound female. Is a hacksaw a good tool to dismember a body? And you wonder now, looking at it, could he possibly be thinking? But you're looking at it from the point of view of a normal, rational person. But he's a sociopath. He's just trying to solve a problem. And that's the way to solve a problem. You can Google anything nowadays and come up with an answer. And the scary part is he didn't even realize that he's leaving an electronic trail that's going to lead straight back to him.
Absolutely. As the police continued to investigate, a picture of Brian began to emerge. Detectives poured over hours of grainy security footage from the CVS and the Whole Foods in Swampscott, where Anna's husband said he'd been on January 1st. They didn't spot Brian. They did find evidence that he bought ice cream for his son on January 2nd, but it wasn't the only time he left the house. Police also found surveillance footage of Brian clad in a mask and gloves at Home Depot that day, buying mops, brushes, tape, a Tyvek suit with boot covers, goggles, buckets, baking soda, and a hatchet, all in cash. When officers searched Brian's basement, suspicions grew with the discovery of drops of blood and a bloody knife. On January 9th, just 5 days after Anna was reported missing, police charged Brian with obstructing their investigation by lying about the whereabouts after she vanished. When authorities led Brian in handcuffs out of the courthouse in Quincy, he smiled broadly for TV cameras. That's pretty sick, huh?
I would say so, Billy. You know, we talked about sociopath. I just want to read the definition of a sociopath. A sociopath is a person with personality disorders manifesting itself into extreme antisocial attitudes and behavior and a lack of conscience. So I think that kind of sums up in a nutshell what we believe the mental state of Brian was at this time. You know, Billy, when we talked about the searches that he did, he also did a search on December the 27th, the best state for a male to divorce in. So he knew that the impending marital problems were lurking. You had the criminal case against him. Also, that there was a $2.7 million life insurance. I think several policies, but adding up to $2.7 million with him as the beneficiary. So again, that's more towards a motive to kill his wife, you know? So there's just many, many things. And real quick, I'm going to read the searches that I found. There was 8 of them. Hair on a dead body. What happens to hair on a dead body? Baking soda, can it make the smell of a dead body lessen? How long before a body starts to smell, a decaying body? How do you throw away body parts? 10 ways to dispose of a body. Best hacksaw to dismember a body. Can you ID a body with broken teeth? That's one of the real ones that jumped out at me. Can you be charged with murder with no body? Bill, you talked about the case with the New York doctor that threw his wife out of a plane and she's somewhere in the ocean. Body never recovered. He was charged and convicted of murder. So the answer to that question, unfortunately for Brian Walsh, is yes, you can be convicted. Is it a difficult case? Yeah, probably a little bit more difficult. Not impossible. It's been done many times.
You know, there's where they found some of the evidence in a dump. I believe they found some bloody clothing and which linked to Ana Walshe. So this guy, even in trying to cover up his steps, he actually, you know, messed up even worse. You know, think of, you know, here he pays in cash at Home Depot. How brilliant was that? You know, also there'll be no electronic credit card print, so he pays in cash, but he's caught on video, and you know, he doesn't consider these things because he's not a smart criminal. But then again, let's draw a parallel. We have a smart criminal named Alec Murdoch, and look how he, you know, the tangled web we weave when we choose to deceive, right, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, you could take the smartest person, Alec Murdoch, very bright. He's an attorney, been working in that county down in Hampton County in South Carolina for 25, 30 years. He's been ripping off people with all kinds of, you know, phony schemes to get their money, ripping off poor people who need, you know, not wealthy people. He's ripping off the poorest people that he can, victimizing people. You have this gentleman here, Brian Walsh. He's probably got a high IQ. He's got a good job, whatever he was doing beforehand. It was a fraudster. You have that. So, you know, you got that. We've talked about this before. You know, it doesn't matter if you're brilliant in a particular field that you're working in, accounting, law, whatever it happens to be. But when it comes to murder, you're a stone cold rookie, and that stone cold rookie has to contend with people like you and Phil, and they're not in their element. They're not playing on their ball field. They're playing by your rules in your ball field. I said it once: if Einstein decided to kill his wife, they would catch him, because no matter what, he doesn't know how to do these things. He doesn't know the science of killing a person, and he would be caught. And a lot of these cases, it's probably not well thought out. they're trying to catch up after they commit the crime, and they can't undo what they've done, and they can't take away evidence that's already produced. They can't always hide it. So it's pathetic, but thankfully he was really amazingly careless.
You know, Mike, even in the last year, we had Maya Malete. Her body was never found. Her husband is in hearings now. He's going to be going to trial. Of course, we have the horrendous case of Gabby Petito, which caught the whole nation, if not the whole world's imagination regarding domestic violence. Of course, this case, Brian Walsh, Ana Walshe, we mentioned Dr. Birnbaum from 1985 was tried in 2000. In 2021, at a parole hearing, he admitted to exactly how he did it, which was exactly how the district attorney, said that he did it. And he did it exactly the way the district attorney predicted. So having said all of that, it seems like the most dangerous time for a woman in a relationship that's falling apart is when it is falling apart, and when it seems that the woman has decided to do something about it and to leave. And in this case, that's what triggered it. You can say in the Madeline Kingsbury, even though she has not been found yet, and it's been over a month right now, that relationship was over or falling apart. Same
Sad
thing with
case.
Maya Malete. So what kind of advice can we give women to, avoid this type of domestic violence and this type of violence leading, when it goes too far? This is what happens. That's why domestic violence procedures in police departments got much stricter over the years.
Yeah.
So what advice can we give as former police officers to our women listeners out there as how to handle this stuff? Phil?
Well, listen, there's a lot of things that you covered right there, Billy. I'm just going to try and give the best advice is, the minute that there starts to be any hint or sign that there's violence, you have to run fast, run away, don't come back. You have to get away. There are many, many different services in most cities that will help victims of domestic abuse, domestic violence. So, and it happens to male and female. Most of the time it's female, but there is services. When a woman with children is faced with the fact that she's being abused and now she has to leave the home, there's not a lot of safety net involved. So there are services that can help. Again, any type of violence, even the threat of violence, should not be tolerated in any way, shape, or form. Bill, you and I and Mike as well, we've dealt with many, many domestic violence cases over the years, and it's probably the most dangerous incident that a police officer can get involved in is domestic violence case. A little over a year ago, we had 2 police officers killed that were called to an apartment up in Manhattan.
3-2 precinct in Manhattan.
3-2. Those both officers were killed. They were called to a domestic violence situation. Fortunately, the perp was also killed, but we lost 2 brave police officers that were now promoted to detectives. And it's just probably the most dangerous situation for uniformed police officers. So again,
I just wanted to mention, Mike, you taught at the same college I did. I won't say the name of the college, but 99% were inner city kids. They were Black and Hispanic kids. And I would look out into that audience and I knew some of them were being victims of domestic violence. I could just tell because I could see it in their eyes when I spoke about it. And I used to say to them, no one should put their hands on you. And if they do, that's what doors are made for. Walk through it and get the hell out of there.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of them came from backgrounds and they weren't taught that. They saw a lot of abuse, and some of them came up to me and asked me what to do, And Mike, I'm sure you had the same experience.
Yeah. In the beginning when I was teaching at that college, you would talk about it in a criminology class. You'd talk about domestic violence, and you could see from what the comments in the class were that people had some familiarity with it. And even in this case, with the Ana Walshe case, there's a report that in 2017, before they were even married, she had filed a police report claiming that he had threatened her her life over the phone, and she ended up not cooperating with the police in that case and wanted the case dropped. So, and when I was originally on the police department in the 4-6, I thought domestic violence was, mostly for poorer people in an inner city. But you then realize people like Ana Walshe, who's upper middle class person in terms of lifestyle and income, she's just as susceptible as anyone else. So it's not anything to do with religion, ethnicity, or social background or economic background whatsoever. It's a personality issue that the aggressor has, and they are very dangerous. And as Phil said, the very first incident where there's a threat, um, you have to be willing and able to get out as fast as you can. It usually does not get better. It usually escalates. And unfortunately for Ana Walshe, she, I think within about 3 or 4 days of her confiding to a friend that she was probably going to leave her husband when he was finally sentenced, um, and start a new life with her family in Washington. He saw it coming probably. There was talk of marital infidelity, but there's that tipping point where it got to the point where there was no going back, and he freaked out. But right at the very beginning, no matter what, the first time that there's any sort of um, uh, violence or threat of violence, that's the time, and that's the safest time, because it's not going to get any safer than that. That's the safest time to walk out.
Mike, I just want to mention people in the chat remind me and re-educate me. It does happen the other way around.
Sure.
There are abusive women that
I said that earlier. Yeah,
that
sure.
does happen. It's more common the other way around. However, to be fair, everyone always straightens me out in the chat. There is potential that it could be a female on male. I've seen that before too.
Yes.
And it's, in a way, the male in that type of situation is treated a little bit unfairly, because it's always assumed by officers that the male is the aggressor, and that's not always the case. Phil?
Absolutely, Billy. And I think that one of the things that needs to be done is what I said earlier. If a woman slapped me in the face, I mean, I'm not going to go to the hospital, but go report it. Go report it to the police. I mean, that's domestic violence. You need to, document these type of things. When I talked about the safety nets that are in place to help people that are victims of domestic violence, there's support groups. There's in the criminal court system in New York, they have counseling. They have support groups that will help people. They can place a woman with children can be placed. So again, it does hit both sides of the sexes, but more prevalent with women. And again, we made the point that there was some things leading up to this that I don't know if they were considered red flags, but I'm calling the motive. We had the money motive. We had the fact that he may be going to jail. There was obviously talk of divorce. And then his mother hired a private investigator and revealed to Brian that possibly Ana was having an affair. Now, again, it's unconfirmed, but it was reported in court that there was a private investigator that gave information to Brian that Ana might have been involved in dating, and allegedly that person was interviewed and said, yes, we're at a dating stage. So again, all of these things go towards motive. I think perhaps, it's easy to Monday morning quarterback it at this point, but she should probably have left and then done all the other things that she was going to do. She should have gotten out of there. I mean, if he had previously been diagnosed as a sociopath, there must have been some, Mike talked about it in 2017, there was the threat of violence. And, maybe there was actual violence. That's the time to run out the door, like Billy said. I thought those were great points.
Guys, drawing parallels to these other cases, there was a case in Connecticut in 2021. Fotis Dulos killed his wife. And they were actually a very affluent couple also. His wife's name was Jennifer Dulos.
Right.
Very similar to this case because they never found her body. And he was arrested and then he wound up committing suicide. So again, a tragic, tragic end to a domestic violence situation. But as the police dug deeper and deeper and deeper into the case, things just came apart. Mike, you shaking your head, you know that case.
Oh yeah, I remember because I teach in Connecticut, but and so we hear a little bit about it, up there with the students because it's one of the things they would like to talk about. Yeah, and it was eerily similar. Thank you for bringing it up because he allegedly dismembered his wife's body, and I think with his girlfriend was seen visiting like 10 or 12 dumpsters throughout the area, throughout the town, and they ended up pretty much getting away with the stuff being, picked up by private sanitation, and taken away. But those are the kind of cases, and these things are published, and people read about them, and then unfortunately, you'll get someone like Brian Walsh, and the idea will pop into his head. Okay, well, I'll do a dismemberment kind of thing because I've seen this on the internet. I've seen this on the news, and they're smart enough they're smart and stupid at the same time. They're smart enough to understand that it makes it difficult for the police, but they're dumb enough because they don't realize that things that they've done they can't undo. And so in terms of time, place, people last seeing them, things that they might have said before, things that are on official records, business records, electronic records. You can't like erase that once that stuff is made.
That could have been the template, Mike. That could have been. He could have saw that case on the news because he basically followed a very similar pattern.
Yeah.
And in that case, the victim they did extensive searches in the garbage dumps in that area to no avail. They never recovered a body. However, just recently, last week or two, his girlfriend, who was charged, I think she was charged as accessory to unlawful dumping of human remains, something to that effect, or tampering with evidence. She was given an ankle bracelet and released recently. She's got home confinement, so she's still awaiting trial. But again, who's the real victims of that case besides Jennifer Dulos? The children are left with no parents. It's disgusting that what goes through a person's mind to do such a thing. And perhaps in this case, the Brian Walsh case, maybe he saw that case. That could have been the template, and he could have said, well, I'm going to be smarter than that guy. I'm not going to kill myself. But unfortunately, again, 3 children, 3 boys left without both parents.
Absolutely. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. If you like real crime stories from a police perspective, then you're in the right place. Go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell, and make comments. We love to read your comments. We try to answer most of the comments. If you want to support us financially, we have a Patreon with 3 different levels, and we also have a YouTube channel membership with, count them, 5 different levels. And you see the folks in the green font. They're part of our YouTube family, and we really appreciate our friends, our family, our subscribers. And that's what makes Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories the real crime story, the real true crime podcast that it is. Phil, and all the things we're talking about, and Mike, this goes for you too. It's easy to criticize the police in these cases. We were even criticized for our point of view in the Gabby Petito case, and all of us have responded to hundreds and hundreds of domestic violence incidents over our police career. And it's always easy to Monday morning quarterback when you're not on the scene, you're not talking to both parties involved. But having said that, and you can connect this to any case, what are the police trying to, and Mike, I'm going to refer this to you first. What are the police trying to build? Let's talk about even this Brian Walsh case. What's the most important evidence they're going to try to build this case? Because they don't want this guy to get out of prison. They want to get him convicted of murder. And again, no body recovered. What's the most important part of this investigation and the collection of evidence?
Well, from my perspective as a patrolman responding to the scene, or as the patrol sergeant, I'm going to have a different view than you and Phil. But I think the most important thing that I would look for as a sergeant responding to that scene, or as a patrolman responding to that scene, I think the police actually went there on almost like a check like a welfare check, because not only did he report his wife missing, but I think the people down in D.C. reported her as not coming to work. But I would look for, a room that looked like there had been a fight in there, like, things knocked over, things broken, because, that's a sure sign that there's been some violence. I would look for some sort of bloody napkins, something in the garbage, like a bloody towel. That's from my perspective as a patrol sergeant. That's what I would look for first. You guys would do, to get all the subpoenas for the electronic information, but I would look for the blood, the most obvious thing, the blood, the area where it looks like maybe a fight took place, defensive wounds, or, on the person who is actually I'm talking to, seeing if they've got scratches on their face, torn clothing, a bloody lip, that sort of thing. That's what I would look for first. The most obvious, I guess.
Mike, incidentally, the picture I'm going to put up on the screen right now, the picture on the left is him buying all those products that we spoke about before from the Home Depot, wearing gloves and a mask and paying cash, because he is a genius and a criminal mastermind. And he pays cash and not realizing he's being caught on video, buying these things that make him look terribly guilty, or well, at least it's establishing enough probable cause to arrest him for this crime and charge him with murder. Phil?
Bill, I just want to point something out. On that picture, if you could put that picture back up, it says Lowe's on that woman's jacket. I know it's not really a big point of contention.
Yeah.
It says Lowe's. They've been reporting Home Depot. It looks like he bought stuff in Lowe's, but either way, he bought the products that they've recovered, and that's more evidence against him. Bill, I want to talk quickly about what I would do as an investigator if I get called to the scene. All right, he's going to report his wife missing. Obviously, I'm going to give a good, hard interview. I want to talk to him. I want to get as much information out of him. And I'm going to ask him questions after he tells me whatever it is he's going to tell me. He's going to tell me my wife went out off to D.C. on an emergency call, whatever his story was initially. But now I'm going to ask him about how are things in the marriage? Are you guys getting along? Do you have issues financially? Do you have any trouble with your children? Is there different things going on? And I'm going to tell him to be honest with me, because obviously I want to eliminate him as a suspect. So he's going to give me more information. I'm going to do a quick criminal background check. We always talk about victimology and perpology. I'm going to do a little possible perpology on him. I'm going to run to see if he has a criminal record. I'm going to find out that he has this pending case where he's going to be sentenced very shortly. So again, that might be a red flag right there. The vehicle, they look at the vehicle in the driveway and they see the seats are pushed down, folded down. There's a plastic top in the back, and they later do a crime scene on the vehicle and they recover some blood. So those are the things, the red flags that are going to initially get my curiosity up. Again, I'm going to start talking to family members right away, her closest friends. Mike alluded to, we're going to get into the cell phone, pull her cell phone records, try to get text messages, see who she was speaking to, look into her social media, see who she was talking to. All of those things would give me a lot of information for me to conduct this investigation and to move forward with it. You would probably find out from the girlfriend that said, she was telling her how she was going to relocate and divorce her husband based on the pending criminal case. And you may find out text messages about if she was dating someone. So again, all of those things, now you get that information, you can go back to him and say, did you know about this? Did you know about that? You didn't tell us about this. You didn't tell us about that. Obviously, you catch him in a few lies, and then it goes from there.
Well, Phil, I'm a big believer in, a lot of times the answer in all these cases is the victimology. And because she's not alive, that doesn't mean you can't still do the victimology. You talk to the people closest to her. And a big interview that I would want to do in this case would be her coworkers.
Absolutely.
What was she telling them? A lot of times you spend more time at work and with people that you work with than you do with your family. Professor Mike, that you have a work wife and you have a home wife, right?
Right.
Oh, you're in trouble. So you have people that you work with that you're with way more than you are with your own family when you're working a lot of hours.
Yeah. Yeah, you work in, I remember just in policing, you're working so many hours, that old 9 squad chart we did. My partner, Augie, and I we were like brothers because we saw each other like every day, and there was times where you didn't see your family for a long time. And same thing with your wife. You're working with somebody for hours and hours and hours, and you have a lot of incidental time where you're talking, you're making comments, you might tell them little tidbits about your life or whatever. And there are things that you might share with intimate things you might share about your feelings about your family life at home. That especially because I think Anna was actually in somewhat working pretty much Monday to Friday down in Washington, D.C., and was actually kind of like a commuter marriage. So she had a lot of time with her coworkers down in D.C., and I think they probably would have heard some comments that she would have made about her home life at home.
Although it seemed that the husband had a good act, and he put on a good act to the neighbors and the friends, that he was a big shot. There was a story about him picking up a $6,000 dinner tab when they were out with their friends, and buying, like a $2,000 bottle of wine, and he didn't have that kind of money. And then there was another story about him potentially stealing $1 million from his parents.
Yes.
So he had some real dirty dealing going on in his life, and that's all part of what we refer to here on Police Off the Cuff as the perpology, looking into his background. The other thing is, part of the background check is looking to see if there are any DV reports, if there's any complaint reports within that household. And that tells the story to the police. And that's when you do a very thorough investigation. Snug with Pug, thank you so much for the 449 super sticker. I love the picture of that little pug dog. So yeah, the investigation is so important. We're not just we're drawing parallels to these other cases too. Like we all painfully covered the Gabby Petito case, and we, I believe the Petito family sued the police. What was the name of that police agency, Phil? They were from that park.
Say again?
They were from that big park. They were
Heartland? No.
No.
Moab. That's what
the Moab police was. That's where they did the car stop. Yes,
okay. So
I thought you were talking about
sued, and the officers that did the stop and the ones that made the decisions, they got a big rip. They actually hired an outside agency to look into how they handled that domestic violence incident. And when we watched it and dissected it and watched it again, we said we thought they did a pretty good job, But
I stand by that. I stand by that.
It had the eyes of the world on it. Everyone was criticizing that. Oh, had they arrested Gabby even, or arrested both of them, it may have, prevented her murder, which happened, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks later after that incident. So Monday morning quarterbacks are saying that if she or he or both of them had been arrested that day, that would prevented her murder 2 or 3 weeks later. I'm not convinced of that.
I mean, I think it's possible that, obviously if one of them were arrested, maybe the other would have went back home and maybe they were separated or something. It's possible, of course. But when you looked at that video and you saw how much time those police officers spent, did everything by the book, separated the two, they got Gabby calmed down, they questioned her extensively, they brought a female officer to the scene, all the different things. Now, listen, if Gabby Petito had stated, he hit me in the eye, cracked me in the eye, look at the mark I got, I think he would have been in cuffs. Unfortunately, that isn't the way it went. We thought that they spent a lot of time with her. We know in the NYPD, domestic violence cases like that, you come upon something in the street, two people arguing, you would probably do the same thing and spend a lot less time and send them on their way. So again, I still stand by that. I believe those officers did a pretty good job. Obviously, listen, at this point, she's killed by him. He committed suicide. I wish it would have went differently. If we could turn back the hands of time, arrest them, one of them, both of them, whatever. But that's not what happened. You have to look at it for what it is. It was just an unfortunate incident. We really hope and pray that that never happened, but unfortunately it did. And God bless the soul of Gabby Petito. And again, the family, Brian Laundrie's family, did him no favors by leaving him out there. He wound up committing suicide. That's a whole nother story. But these domestic violence cases, they're very sensitive, and you handle them 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a half a dozen times during a tour when you're on patrol in the NYPD, and you kind of may become complacent. They become routine, but there's that one that has a little bit more, and you don't really see it, and you could wind up with a tragedy like this.
I want to talk about the peripheral people around cases like this too. Brian's mother hiring a private eye to follow her around to see who did that help? To see if she was having an affair. That potentially could have led to this violent act, that he found out she was having an affair. And as I said, what good was that the mother did that for her son? It was like pouring gasoline on an inferno. Mike?
Yeah, that might have been the tipping point. Thank you for bringing that up, because he probably knew that, because of probably things that they've said many times over the previous couple of months, that she was planning on, not coming back for, to be with him as a husband and wife with those children in that home in Massachusetts. She already had a house set up down in Washington. She'd stayed there many nights, probably more nights than she was there in the Boston area. And perhaps, it was bad enough thinking that his wife might actually leave him, or there's going to be some sort of divorce involved when he goes off to prison for the fraud. But then on top of that, you have now marital infidelity. And apparently he was already suspicious, and he was following some Instagram account or something like that of someone who he actually thought was the guy that she was having an affair with. And the mother jumping in, that's never a good thing, to have a mother-in-law on anyone's side jumping into the middle of an intimate husband-wife relationship. And she actually may have contributed to his going off the deep end and killing Ana.
That may have been the catalyst to this,
Yeah.
that got it going. But, we also want to talk about, we all point to that New York Times article after the Murdoch case where he was like, oh, it wasn't fair. Electronic devices were the evidence that really put him away. And we were like, dude, first learn about what you're writing about before you write this article. Again, electronic devices came up big time in this case. The searches on his son's iPad, the cars, the cell phones, the video of him buying things that Phil pointed out at Lowe's, wearing a mask, all these different electronic devices, bank transactions that we don't even know about, right? Mm-hmm. If he paid cash, that he had to take the cash out of some bank.
Good point.
There's a record right there. So all of these things, like, to you amateur investigators out there, these are all the things that the police have to think of. And not just the police. Sometimes you have a really good district attorney that's impugning the police to do certain things. Do this, do that, do that. And, a lot of times cops will be like, the DA's giving me too much stuff to do. But the district attorney is thinking about the jury and presenting the case to a jury. And that's the person, whether it's male or female, that wants to cross their T's and dot their I's. And as many times as a district attorney may say, oh, do this and do that, it's probably a good idea that you do it. And because that's going to be that evidence in court that's going to ultimately lead to a conviction. Phil?
I'm glad you brought that up, Billy, because in every homicide case that I ever worked on, district attorney's office is usually involved in the case early on. They support you by giving you subpoenas, search warrants, different things like that. And again, they do point out a lot of different things that they go over the case to evaluate witnesses, and they say, all right, you know what, go do a canvas over here, go find a witness over there, and things that will be done. And listen, at the end of the day, they're right. They're going to try the case. They want to win the case. They want as much evidence as they can possible to go forward with the trial so they can get a conviction. Like you said, they're thinking about the jury, they're thinking about the legal system, they're thinking about defense attorneys, all of the different things, the judge. So again, We usually had pretty good cooperation with the Brooklyn DA's office when I worked in Brooklyn. Any homicide case, there were contentious times from time to time when they'd be requesting stuff. We wanted to authorize a homicide arrest, and they didn't want to go for it yet. Go do these 2 things or these 3 things, whatever it was. And I got to tell you, 100% of the time, they won the argument. We did it, and then we went forward with the case, whether it be an arrest or go do something else, and the case remained open. It just we had a good relationship with them, and they were very good with us. And like I said, they're the support. At the end of the day, they wind up in Brooklyn and in 5 boroughs of New York. They always authorized whether or not we were going to make an arrest for homicide.
A lot of people will argue over the fact that, this world is a bubble. We have license plate readers. There's video cameras everywhere. Your electronics are tracked. The GPS in your phone is tracked. There's those little round things that I can throw in your car. And that tracks
tiles,
a
tile.
Now then NYPD now is talking about handing them out to people because grand larceny auto has gone through the roof. Guess what? Start locking people up and it won't go through the roof. It's these ideas that come out. Instead of doing police work and the district attorney, and I'm not blaming the police, they're doing their job. The district attorney refusing to prosecute cases. It's sort of funny. We're going to give out tiles so people can track their own cars. So they're going to get their car back from the bad guy? You're going to get people killed trying to retrieve their cars. It makes no sense whatsoever, Mike?
Bill, you go ahead, Mike.
Oh, it's ideology over competence. The idea, and we've done this. We've gone through this from the 80s and the 90s and into the present day. We know that probably, a few career criminals, are responsible for the vast majority of crime. You don't have to lock up, 600,000 people in New York City every single year. You lock up 6,000, and that will probably lower the crime rate by like 50%. It's just, we know that the poor people who are the ones who are in most need of policing, they're the ones who are the most victimized by anybody else because they have to live in those neighborhoods. They don't have the ability to move to a different neighborhood. They're the ones that are suffering the most. And district attorneys who just cannot stand politically the optics are doing a very disservice. It's ideology over competence, and they're re-victimizing the poor people who just cannot, who rely 100% on the district attorneys and the police department. It's sad.
Well, Mike, I remember, we all worked through the CompStat era, and we all know, and I think I could speak for all 3 of us, how effective broken windows style policing is. Mm-hmm. And you say that now, and it's a dirty word to these progressives. Oh my God, broken windows. Concentrating on the little crimes, and that'll have an effect. It works. It 100% works. And the problem is they don't want to prosecute even serious crimes now. When you hear this clown brag, the Manhattan DA, dropping a robbery first degree to a misdemeanor, sticking a gun in someone's face and taking their property, and then he's going to downgrade it to a misdemeanor. That's criminal. He should be arrested for that.
100%, Billy, 100%. And, what Mike was basically talking about is what we refer to as a recidivist. Someone continues to commit the same crime over and over again. And I saw a statistic recently. I can't remember the exact numbers, but they said in the New York City subway system where crime has gone through the roof, if they arrested a certain number, I think it was less than 200 individuals, that there would be a major, major drop in crime. And again, that goes throughout the city. You have the same people committing the same crimes over and over. Back in the 80s, when I was in the robbery squad, I would be able to get a police report of a robbery. A robbery is when someone sticks a gun in a person's face, or they use force or a knife or whatever it is. And I'd be able to look at it and see the description, the location, and I knew the same players were playing that area. And we would go out and we would try to find, and sure enough, we would get that person, get a photo ID, then put them in a lineup, and we would make the arrest. And there was a bit of a sort of a turnstile justice where they would get out rather quickly. A lot of times, if there wasn't a serious injury, if you had a complainant that didn't want to press charges, they were afraid, whether it be an elderly person or something of that nature, these guys would get out again. But again, we need to crack down on that type of crime if you want to see crime go down. Broken windows policy, I couldn't laud it enough. I think it's something that worked in the past and it'll work again.
Absolutely.
Joe Murray, attorney at law. Now, everybody that watches Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories, they know that Joe is a big supporter of the channel. But I want to tell you about Joe. Joe is a retired 15-year member of the NYPD. He was also a boxer, and now he's in criminal law. He's a terrific attorney. He might be able to deliver that knockout punch on your case. So if you have need for an attorney in the criminal area or in New York City just for advice, you could get a hold of Joe at jmurray-law.com. His telephone number is 646-838-1702, or you could email Joe at jmurray-law.com. Joe is a terrific guy and a very, very good criminal defense attorney.
Joe, thanks for all you do for Police Off the Cuff.
Absolutely.
You know, folks in the chat, and we know we've covered these cases before, these domestic violence incidents, and if there's anyone out there in the chat that, wants to email us or talk to us about a problem they're having, we're willing to talk to you. And of course, the Police Off the Cuff, it's Police Off the Cuff, the number 1 at gmail.com. We could, at the very least, refer you to the right place and give you good advice, because we understand that, these situations, these domestic violence situations, they're not easy. We're not trying to oversimplify. Look, relationships are difficult, and even the best relationships have their peaks and valleys, and but when it gets violent, that's a time that you got to do something about it, and that's a time that the law has to get involved. Mike?
Yeah, the violence can happen before the relationship breaks apart, and it may be the cause of the relationship. It may escalate for a long period of time. And sometimes there are hills and valleys where the violence will escalate. Then there'll be a honeymoon phase, and it'll go back to escalating again. So it's a very dynamic and dangerous situation. And even at the end of the relationship, if there hasn't been violence, it still may occur when these people who are now used to be a couple are now apart. And now they have to share the responsibilities of having children. I remember seeing couples having to bring their children to the front steps of the 4-6 precinct to exchange their children on a Friday evening, so that the father can then have custody for the weekend, because there was such danger for the interrupting on both sides. We've had some very violent ladies also. So there is a lot, the dynamics of a domestic violence situation, as we all know, it's very fluid and it's very unpredictable, and it's very dangerous for police officers, and even in the most routine manner. And so it's one of those type of situations that, along with car stops, are the most dangerous assignments for police officers statistically.
Agreed.
Mike, one of the toughest jobs I ever handled as a police sergeant was a domestic violence incident between 2 deaf mutes. It was nearly like an impossible job. And
wow.
with Sector Adam in the 2-4 precinct, they handled it for like an hour before they called me there. And they basically held up their hands like, we don't know what to do. And I got to the scene and I was just like, take this into the station house. That's the best place to deal with it. But how they say, call operations. They have people waiting there.
Yeah.
Sign languages. Yeah. They must not have been working that night, So, and I wound up having an interaction with this couple several more times. And the next time I was called, I just put the handcuffs on the guy. And he was a big dude, and he was strong, and he fought us too. And it was just like, this guy got to get collared. That's the only way this is going to stop, and that did somewhat stop it. Well, it curtailed it for a while, and then it picked up again later on.
Yeah, they're very dangerous. I remember with Augie, Augie, we worked together in the 4-6 for years. We locked up a gentleman for domestic violence for battering his wife, and he started crying and pleading for her. And she actually jumped on Augie's back to stop him from arresting her, and then I had to arrest her for interfering with policing, and so they both ended up getting arrested. And we
Yeah,
had
and they're in cells across from each other and going, "I love you, honey. I know I love you too." And you're like, "This is crazy,"
It was ridiculous, but this is the kind of thing that there's no, the fine line between love and hate. It's not even a line. Sometimes it's like a dash, and it just goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. They're very volatile, very unpredictable. People will go back, unfortunately, to the home or back into the relationship, and that is very dangerous, because then if they go back, then they've ceded power back to the abuser, and that makes it even more dangerous, unfortunately.
Absolutely. Phil?
I could remember a case on Christmas Day, I believe it was 1984, 83, no, 83. Same thing, domestic violence case. The guy was drunk, fighting with his sister. The police are called. We go in there. The guy pulls a knife, tries to stab my partner. We wind up in a wrestling match, hit him with the nightstick. While we're wrestling with this guy, I feel somebody pull my hair from behind. I turn around and I shove the person. It was the sister that called the police on the brother. And the funny thing about it was, at the end of the whole thing, we were by ourselves. There was only 2 cars in the whole precinct. We get the guy cuffed. We get him to the precinct. 3-4 hours later, we're doing all the processing. I'm sorry, guys. I was drunk. I didn't mean it. He wound up apologizing, but extremely dangerous. The guy actually had 2 knives. He pulled a knife on us when we went through the door, drew our guns. He dropped the knife. We started talking with him, and then it escalated. He pulled another knife, like a steak knife, out of his bathrobe, went to stab my partner. We wound up in the bedroom on the floor, and that's when the sister, sure enough, from behind, pulled my hair, trying, attack us from arresting her brother, that she called the police. So you never know. These things, they turn like that.
Yeah, they're very volatile situations. Folks, we're going to keep covering these situations, especially domestic violence, because we think it can help our audience, which is made up, by the way, of 74% females. I don't know how that happened, but we have a 74%.
Course of me, baby. Course of me.
Because of Phil, straight out of Brooklyn. They want to go on a cannoli date.
That's it.
So, Mike, final words.
Final words. Oh, I think people should, when they see this case, they see cases like the Gabby Petito case and Melanie Kingsbury case, and this case with Ana Walshe, that these cases stem from this. It's not just the very first time, that there's probably, more likely than not, a trail of, unfortunately, later on, when you find out later on after the incident, but there's probably been a number of previous incidents that have led up to this particular incident, where the female, or in some cases the male, goes missing. And people should just realize that the police are well trained. They've got a lot of tools, law enforcement tools, at their disposal. If anybody here that's listening in the podcast, if they or a loved one is the victim of some domestic violence, please implore them to get out as soon as possible.
100%. Phil, final words.
Unfortunately for Ana Walshe, this didn't turn out too good. She's probably dead. I think that's a gimme at this point. Keep her and those 3 children in your prayers. The family. I think there's a strong case against Brian Walsh in this case. We went through all of the evidence. He's probably going to wind up getting convicted. Let's hope and pray for the justice of that. And I'm just going to agree with everything that Mike said. If you are a victim of domestic violence or any threat of violence in a domestic situation, there are services. I know in the Brooklyn DA's office, they had a unit that was assigned just to help victims of domestic violence. So again, wherever community you're in, reach out. And if you need to reach us, build a website was policeoffthecuff1@gmail. Is that correct? That's the email address.
Policeoffthecuff1@gmail, right? Exactly.
Reach out. We could always steer you guys in the right direction and give some advice if need be. So again, domestic violence, a very, very tough thing to swallow, very, very volatile situations. And let's keep these people in thoughts and prayers.
Folks, that's our show for this evening. Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. Again, I want to thank everyone for their prayers for my 21-hour drive back from Florida. I made
You're
it.
a trooper, Bill. You're a
I'm a little
trooper.
numb for 2 days, but I'm here. I went to the gym today, and I'm still a little bit beat up, but I
We're
made
glad
it.
to have you back, Billy. We're glad to have you
Thanks.
back.
Good to be back, guys. Have a great night, everyone, and God bless.
Stay safe, everyone.
Good night.
One episode just ain't enough.